Well, hello, friends. It's Thursday. Thank you for joining me for this time when we get together in the Word. And we're now seeing a chapter close. And what I mean by that is not necessarily a book of the Bible, but a chapter in terms of the history of Israel. What I mean by that is God initially anointed Saul to be king. Saul acted unrighteously, so God rejected him as king. Not only did he reject Saul, but he rejected his family so that there would not be that lineage of his son taking his place. One of those would be Jonathan. Instead, God told Samuel, the prophet at the time, to go out and find the king. And this king would not be one who would be stately in appearance, not impressive in stature, but yet he would be one who had a heart for God. And of course, we know that ultimately was David. Now, that happens early on, chapter 16 of 1 Samuel. And we have several chapters until the time where we eventually see here in 2 Samuel, David is now positioned to be the king. But notice before we get there, we see something happen. It's tragic. A battle ensues. Saul and his sons are all killed. Saul himself commits suicide because he doesn't want to give the enemy the joy or the sense of satisfaction of killing him and torturing him in many ways. So he commits suicide basically. And so we now come to 2 Samuel chapter 1. We're told that an Amalekite comes and he informs David of what happens. We know he's lying actually because he says he killed Saul when actually we're told that Saul killed himself. But this Amalekite is then judged by David. But one thing I want you to notice is when we get to verse 17, David laments. It says he's saying the following lament. Now, to lament means to feel extreme sorrow over something that has happened. And that's fascinating to me because now for many chapters, from the time that Saul began to sense that David was going to be king and became jealous, until all the way to 2 Samuel chapter 1, Saul has pursued David on several different occasions. Forced David to have to live in the wilderness, forced him to have to live on the run. All these things have happened in an effort to try to kill David because he didn't want David to be king. He wanted to continue to be king, and he wanted his sons to be king. And David has endured this hardship. David has endured these long seasons of difficulty. And yet, despite all that, when the news comes to him that Saul and his sons are dead, we're told that David laments. And I want you to listen to some of the words of this lament that are given to us in verses 19 and following. The splendor of Israel lies slain on your heights. How the mighty have fallen. So listen now how he's already describing Saul and his sons. He's saying the mighty have fallen. He's not saying the cowards have finally got what their just due was. He's talking about, hey, they were still considered to be men of great might, great power, great battle prowess. In fact, he goes on to describe describe them in verse 22. Look what he says. Jonathan's bow never retreated. Saul's sword never returned unstained. In other words, they were always courageous in battle. They always fought valiantly. They never retreated. They never ran from the battle. They always went in to fight hard. Saul and Jonathan, loved and delightful. Oh my goodness. How can he say that about them? How can he describe them as delightful, loved, even though they had acted, Saul especially had acted in such a way. Now, Jonathan, on the one hand, loved David. He did his best to defend David, to try to position David to be where he should be. So we can see how David would have such a love for Jonathan, but he puts them in the same category. Saul and Jonathan, loved and delightful. It says they were swifter than eagles. They were stronger than lions. Again, referring to the fact that they were valiant warriors. He tells the daughters of Israel, weep for Saul. He is the one who has allowed you to prosper. And then he says again, verse 25, how the mighty have fallen in the thick of battle. He's talking specifically about Jonathan now, moving forward from that. I grieve you, Jonathan, my brother. You were such a friend to me. Your love for me was more wondrous than the love of women. How the mighty have fallen, and the weapons of war have perished. So 3 times he says, how the mighty have fallen. So even though in our minds Saul acted, cowardly on many occasions, David's not saying that. David's not agreeing with that. David's saying, hey, this man was a valiant warrior. This man was God's anointed. That's the reason why David never attacked him, never sought to take him out. He always saw Saul as God's anointed, and he acted appropriately toward that. And now he's lamenting his death. The one who pursued him passionately over a period of time, he's lamenting his death, along with the death of his great friend Jonathan. The two of them had a tremendous bond, a bond of brothers, no less, lamenting them tremendously. But this is a reminder that the way we respond to others should never be a mirror of what they've done to us, returning to them evil for their evil. Instead, we should always seek to return good. And David is showing us through this lament that can be a heartfelt endeavor, because these words that he's pouring out are definitely words that are coming from his heart. He's not just patronizing people. He's not just trying to be put on a good show for others. I know there's been times when we knew people were at odds with one another, and one of them might experience a hardship or a difficulty, maybe even death, and the other might kind of act in ways that was not consistent with what they were, how they were acting, and people were like, wait a minute, while this person was alive, or hey, wait a minute, why is this person acting like this? Because it's clear that they don't care for the other individual. David wouldn't put on a show. What David was doing was a direct overflow or an outpouring of his heart, how he truly felt about Saul and how he felt about Jonathan. He did not let the way that Saul, treated him, the way that Saul acted toward him, determine how he was going to act toward Saul. And that's what it's got to be, folks. We cannot return evil for evil. We must always bless. When someone curses, we must bless. That was Jesus' command. When someone intends evil, we must seek greater good. That's the life of the believer. And so as we think about these verses today, maybe there's someone in your life that has always treated you harshly. Maybe there's someone that's in your areas of influence that it's just always been difficult to get along with them, because despite your every effort to be good to them, they're always trying to figure out some way to get a leg up, or trying to figure out ways to maybe make you look bad. Maybe they're saying things that are not right. I'm not saying that we endure lies. We always want truth to rule and reign. However, we must do that even through love. We must speak truth in love. And I know it's easier said than done. Trust me, I know that. But the fact of the matter is, that's the way someone who has a heart after God, David was a man after God's own heart, and we really do see that right here in this lament, that he did not allow their actions, that of Saul specifically, to then determine how he was going to act in response to Saul. He didn't do it. Instead, he let the heart of God rule and reign, and he acted in a way that was loving, caring, and compassionate, and so should we. Well, love you, friends. I'm looking forward to a great day of celebrating our Lord yet again this coming Sunday. But until we're together again, live sent.